I get started, I'd like to thank the Davis family and the Automotive Hall of Fame for having me here in this magnificent new building. It really has that new building smell. I consider it one of the great honors of my life to induct my mentor, David E. Davis Jr., in front of this good-looking crowd. David E. had one of the great offices of all time. He ran Automobile magazine from a tall, tin-ceilinged diorama on the corner of 4th and Liberty Streets in Ann Arbor. It was filled with pictures of him with Fangio, Gurney, Shelby, and many other one-word, one-name legends enshrined in the hall. On one wall was the grille from a Mercedes-Benz 600, and on the other was a pink neon sign that read Animal X. But the first thing you saw was the sign above the door. It read, "If we want the readers to think it's important, we have to treat it importantly." This was David's battle cry, not just in the editorial sense, but for his whole life. He knew it was important, and he treated it with proper ceremony. He did it with flair. David was a romantic, a raconteur, a hunter, of birds and deer, but also of the good life. He came from the great storytelling tradition of the South, and he had an innate sense of what to leave in and what to leave out. This served him well in his stints in the ad business and in publishing. But David didn't think of himself as a copywriter or journalist. He thought of himself as a sort of professional enthusiast, someone whose job it was to share his passions with the world. His guiding passion was personal freedom, and he believed that the car was the best means of achieving it. Words were important. Unlike most automotive writers, like me, whose prose was loose and padded, David E.'s words had weight and precision and pace. They hurtled across the page like the V12-powered GTs he loves so much. During the decade I worked for David at Automobile, I got to see his process up close. He agonized over words because he knew that the right words were the gateway to the imagination. When David E. worked at Campbell Ewald on the Corvette account in the 60s with Betty Skelton, he told me he used to start off by writing ads for Ferraris and then substituted the word Corvette for Ferrari when he turned in his copy. He wanted to capture the aspirations of the Corvette by summoning the spirit of those legendary Italian road racing cars. And what do you know? Here we are, all these years later, with Corvettes that stand tall against the cars from Maranello. Now, David E. did not engineer the cars that got GM there, let me be clear, but his words helped to set the path. And at Car and Driver, David E. conjured more brand-defining imagery, this time for BMW. Here's David on the German two-door he made famous from his classic story, Turn Your Hymnals to 2002. Nobody believes it until I suck their headlights out, but nobody doubts it once that nearly silent, unobtrusive little car has disappeared down the road and around the next bend, still accelerating without a sign of the brake lights. That story defined BMW and led to its rise in America because David captured what made those cars important. It wasn't about the 2002's performance numbers. It was about the car's essence, the way it made you feel. That's what his writing did. It put you there. Presentation was important too, both personal and on the page. Automobile magazine, which he launched in 1986 after a second storied run at Car and Driver, was the first four-color, perfect-bound car magazine in America. He wanted a format that would treat the car with the importance it deserved. They say you judge an editor by the writers they attract, and David E. attracted the best. Bruce McCall, Jamie Kitman, who's sitting right here, P.J. O'Rourke, Jim Harrison, the list goes on and on. They wanted to write for David because his magazines were pure reflections of his own charisma, philosophy, and style. Car and Driver and Automobile were basically David E. in printed form. And his personal presentation was no less legendary. It was not uncommon for David E. to show up at the office wearing a tweed cape from his favorite Savile Row tailor, Anderson and Shepard. And at one corporate function, he came wearing a pith helmet. Yes, a pith helmet. But he pulled it off. I am, he announced, an adventurer, a risk taker, a man who shuns conformity. Ultimately, because he treated the important things importantly, he himself became important. There is no legacy in automotive journalism like David's. He knew that if you dramatize the driving experience and put your whole self on the page, people would pay attention. You would connect with the audience in a profound and lasting way. Car enthusiast, red car and driver, and automobile, wanting to be the ones driving the cars, traveling the world, and experiencing the good life the way David E. depicted it. Swashbuckling adventures, all enabled by the automobile. In doing so, he inspired many of us car enthusiasts to become car journalists. Everyone from grizzled magazine editors to fresh-faced YouTubers owe David E. a huge debt of gratitude. He was the spark. Welcome, David E. Davis, Jr., to the Automotive Hall of Fame.